I'm Lenn Woolston. I'm a writer, blogger, and nerd, and thanks for stopping by today because we're going to be talking all about how writers should read outside of their genre. Now notice I said read outside of your genre, not necessarily write out of your genre. So before you start throwing all this hate at me saying that you're writing the wrong thing, I'm talking about why you should read outside of your genre. But I will say that writing out of your comfort zone is probably going to surprise you in a really great way. I know it has for me, so consider me encouraging you to do that. But today we're going to be talking about reading outside of your genre. Oh, comfort zones. They're just so cozy and they're comfy and they're like putting on your favorite warm fuzzy socks and cuddling up with a blanket and then holding a nice warm mug of your favorite hot beverage. It's just so wonderful. And it's been raining here all of a sudden. We went from summer to now going back to winter. And so the idea of staying in a comfort zone, my gosh, that sounds so delightful. But it's not practical. So I'm here today to give you 7 different benefits to reading outside of your genre and how it will help you with your writing. Number 1, observe different writing styles. You've probably noticed that when it comes to writing your craft and there is a certain kind of, I would say, expectation from your readers to, if you are writing a thriller, the tension and the pacing is going to go really quickly because you're gonna want to need to know. However, if you're more into classic literature where things are just very poetic and it's very lyrical, your sentences and your pacing and your tension might be a bit drawn out. By reading different genres, you'll see that there's kind of a similarity as far as like genre-specific language that's used, either with how the narrator is telling the story or how the dialogue is. There's things that are very similar you'll see when you are in certain genres. And so by allowing yourself to kind of read out of the genre that you're writing in, you get to see how other authors go about telling their story using different styles of writing. Similarly, number 2 is to hear different voices. This is very character specific, and I know that you probably are aware that in your genre there are, again, expectations to how certain characters talk and certain characters kind of present themselves. And this goes back to like kind of what archetype they are, but I just want to like throw out an example. So think about all of my fantasy writers out there, okay? Your drunken orc that is in a tavern is going to speak very differently than, let's say, a nice young innocent girl that is in a young adult rom-com. There's going to be different voices, and that's great because it kind of lets the reader identify and get more of a relatable sense to who that character is as they're reading the story, so that they don't need all the details, because the way that they're presenting themselves and how they react in certain conversations is going to come through, especially in that dialogue. So by reading different genres, you can kind of see how these characters will kind of interact together. Can you imagine a drunken orc in a tavern talking to a young teen girl? How might that look? And how do you stick with each of those characters and their voices? Again, by reading out of your genre, you'll kind of get a sense of how each of those characters are in their genre, and then you could combine them in your own story to give it a nice, unique spin. Number 3 is explore new worlds. This is a shout out again to my fantasy writers, but also my sci-fi writers that are out there, because when it comes to your world building, my gosh, you writers do such an amazing job because it's so much part of your story, just what kind of world you're creating. But then there's also a great thing about when you are reading something that takes place in our world. So if it is more realistic, like in romance, or if it's like a medical thriller, we already have a sense of what that environment is, but you can use some of that world building if you were to read the sci-fi and fantasy genres to kind of see how they go into detail about their environment and what kind of unique spin could you put on that if you were doing something that is kind of relatable to the world that we know. By reading outside your genre, you'll get an idea of how they incorporate the details of their environment into their story to, again, make it for something that makes readers just want to pick up your work off the shelves. Number 4 is get inspired. I can tell you that my comfort zone has always been science fiction and fantasy. When it comes to my writing, that's what I love doing. I love being able to explore these new worlds and different stories that aren't so similar to the life that I live. However, I have been reading more outside of my genre, and that's including like age. You know, when I started writing, I thought for sure I was just going to tackle the adult market, and that's where I was going to be. But as I realized when it comes to my stories and kind of some of the characters that were in my stories, I was leaning towards more young adult for some of my work. And so that really opened up my eyes to the potential to also write for young adult. I also have been toying with the idea of even looking into middle grade and going back and like reading some of the things that I liked in middle grade, but there's so many great middle grade books that are coming out. And so I definitely urge you to not only read outside of your genre for your story, but then also who your target audience is, because when it comes down to it, you may find that you're kind of tiptoeing on this line between one or two and being able to identify, okay, what makes middle grade, what makes young adult, and what makes something adult. By being able to kind of read in those different genres for whatever it is that you're writing, you can kind of see where there are similarities, but then also what is a defining topic or a defining style that makes it so that those like go into those different age brackets to, again, really target that audience that you're wanting to get to when it comes to your specific story. Again, going off personal experience, like I never thought I would be writing a young adult contemporary novel, but that's currently what I'm working on. And it all kind of was coming together as I was reading more outside of my genre and just getting inspired about like how these different stories are really becoming relatable to teens, and I kind of had my own experience that I wanted to share and put into a story. And so definitely I say that if you read outside your genre, you'll find that you get inspired because it's being exposed to something that you wouldn't normally be exposed to, and that definitely has a lasting effect. Number 5, sharpen your craft. Being able to read outside your genre, again, exposes you to different formats and different stories, and so it allows you to, as a writer, when you're reading, you can pick up on the subtleties that, you know, readers who aren't writers wouldn't necessarily pick up on. For example, like you already know kind of what makes the story and like what plot elements are needed, but if you read outside your genre, you can see how different writers tackle that and what makes it so unique about their specific genre. And I'll be honest here, I don't want to be a one-trick pony. I don't want to be somebody who only writes one type of book over and over and over again. So allowing myself to kind of know, okay, what else is there in the market when it comes to readers, then I can get an idea of kind of, okay, I see what they did there, and I'm going to see if I can do my own unique way of that same craft for my story. Number 6 is extend your community. So you may be in some kind of group that identifies you as like a science fiction writer, or you might be in some group that's just for romance, or you might be a cozy mystery group and that's who you have your critique partners through. Totally fine. Absolutely fine. And that's great. You should find your people. I would also encourage you to look again outside your genre, because when it comes down to it, no matter what genre people are writing, we're all writers and we all want to support each other, because when you connect with other writers, they get exactly what it's like. They understand what the process is for, you know, creating a story, writing the story, editing that story, revising that story, and then getting it out to readers. We all are there to support each other. So by reaching out to people who maybe not necessarily write what you write, again, that just extends your community, and then you can support and encourage each other, which again is what this writing community is all about. And lastly, number 7. an opportunity to grow. Like I was mentioning earlier, I don't want to just be this one-trick pony that only does one type of story over and over. So by reading outside of my genre, it gives me an opportunity to grow. By incorporating all of the other benefits I was talking about, I can kind of say, okay, I understand what everybody else is doing. I can pick up on what makes that story that genre and how that writer is getting away with this certain thing. And I can take all that knowledge and I can apply it to my own writing. It's kind of like having multiple tools in your arsenal when it comes to you just being able to produce the best story ever. By looking at like, okay, there's romance over here, and if I read that, then maybe that will help me in my subplot of romance for my story. Or looking at the tension and pacing for a thriller and how I can incorporate that into like my ghost story or something to that effect. Being able to kind of pick up on the skill and the technique of other writers and then saying, okay, how am I going to incorporate that same thing to enhance my story is what reading outside your genre really is all about. Because you will be able to see that there's not just one way to do a story, and that's represented by how many different genres there are out there. So I highly recommend for you to kind of see what is one genre that you've kind of just been putting on the back burner or not even going down that aisle in the bookstore. Maybe that's time for you to just pick up at least one book and kind of see how that writer goes about telling that story. Use it as research. You don't have to all of a sudden love a different genre and decide, okay, that's what I'm going to focus on. But again, just being out of your comfort zone gives you that opportunity to grow. And that's what the best writers do, is they always are hungry and thirsty for more knowledge and want to grow. All right, there you have it. Those are my benefits to reading outside of your genre. And I want to know, what genre do you write in and what genre do you read? Go ahead and leave those down in the comment section down below, because I would love to hear all about what it is that makes you want to write a certain genre and what you read to get inspired. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for checking out my channel. I hope that you guys consider subscribing to my channel, because then you won't miss a single video where I talk about all things writerly, and I post on Fridays. And with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Happy Friday. We've made it to the weekend. And until next video, bye!